Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews, this being a show about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Promised Land. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we're immediately picking up after the last episode. I thought that was a really neat twist where it seems like, I thought Billy didn't know that Margaret was the reason he was here. No, he knows she was the reason why, because she's the one that supported him while he was able to get into rehab and stuff like that. If it wasn't for him, so that's another person that's going to feel indebted to Margaret, just like Carmen kind of did to some extent. Like, Margaret's just got her fingers in every little thing, manipulating and pushing everything forward for the purpose, the express purpose of destroying this family, because she's trying to destroy it from the inside out. Because the moment it turns out Billy, it comes back, her plan is to basically have him be the disruptor, because she knows that things between him and Letty, like, obviously those feelings did resurface upon meeting Letty again, so it's like, of course, he wanted to get as far away because he didn't want to be responsible for destroying the marriage between his brother and the woman he loves. Like, he didn't want to do that to either one of them. These are the people he cared about. He's a different person now. He doesn't want to destroy it, because he had always known how his brother felt about Letty from the very beginning, so... And so when Billy wants to leave, though, things with Junior escalate. Apparently, he punched the kid. It wasn't until, near the end of the episode we finally found out what it was. But I guess, he had talked about, Father Ramos and his mom used to be married. And then someone brings up, it called Letty a whore. So he ended up, punching the kid. Now, whether that... I guess that... I don't think he had a reason to lie, but... Because at the time, all he said was, yeah, some kid was, running his mouth. That's all it was, so... But I do like that this episode ended up bringing Billy and Joe closer together than they have been in a long, long, long time. Since probably the stuff in the past is probably when they were at their closest, I think. It could be wrong, but I like the parallels between back then and now. So just as Joe and Letty are kind of in a better place by the end of the episode, where also, the flashbacks are when Billy and Letty started becoming a thing. Because even Rosa had pointed out, both, Joe and Billy are obsessed with you. So, at the end of the day, what do you want to do about that? You're going to choose one, which she's no, she just wants to be single, but... It's interesting, too, because maybe this plays into it. Once again, we haven't seen Rosa. Once again, maybe if we go back and listen to some of the present-day stuff, maybe they reference Rosa, but I don't think they have. But she was trying to convince Letty to go and be a teacher. It's right, you can't just, working at picking grapes isn't why we came here. You came here to be a teacher, which she thinks, yeah, this is the first steps towards that. Having a good, stable enough job like this to get money to save up to do what she wants to and become a teacher. But things get complicated in the past when Billy and Joe's dad shows up. And it seems like their dad... We don't really talk... I don't think their moms come up in conversation, but Billy hates their dad. Their dad is always in and out of their lives. He only comes around when he wants something, gets what he wants, and then he bounces. Whether it's Mexico or America, it's always, it's sadly the same thing over and over again. To the point that Billy, started pouring more and more drinks into his dad's cup. Because Joe... actually was sending their dad money, even told him where he was. It's yeah, because dad's, back, it's hard, he can't work. So Joe kept giving him reason, kept justifying, no, making excuses, saying, no, dad can change. He might have made mistakes before, so... And I think that's a beautiful parallel that they create, because we saw not only, Joe in the past believed that people could change. Joe, present day, didn't, which I think is so interesting, because obviously Billy and him have switched that, where it's Joe used to believe that, Billy didn't. Present day, Billy believes that, Joe doesn't. And we saw the moment he stopped believing in that was because his dad got drunk, mainly because of Billy, because Billy kept pouring drinks down his dad's gullet. But that's also because Billy was no, I want you to see our dad for who he really is. It doesn't matter if I pour drinks or not. He will eventually get to the point that he'll show his true colors. Being drunk is just going to show you what's there underneath. What he tries to hide, try to be suave and try to be fun dad, blood is thicker than water type of thing, right? But Joe, after, him, touching on Margaret like that, which is 100% gross, and the fact that he did that, he's I'm sorry about the wine, but he was no, that wasn't the wine. you are not, like, drunk or not, that's who you are. And he was like, I want you going. You can't change. And even Billy, hearing his brother say that, broke his heart, because he was like, because now he's probably blaming himself, like, did I break that part of my brother? That part of my brother that was hopeful and believing people can change? Like, Billy in that moment might have contributed to making Joe who he is today to some extent. Like, I mean, everything back then influenced and made Joe who he is. Like, we are all culminations of all of our experiences, good and bad. You know, the things we go through, nature versus nurture, they forge us into what we are. So maybe Joe would have eventually gotten there even without Billy's help, but Billy did kind of help his brother see their dad for who he was. But maybe if Joe had come to it in his own right and own light, then maybe the result wouldn't be what it is. Like, maybe Joe wouldn't be where he is right now. Because he'd even promised that he would do everything he could not to become their dad. Because he feels like a failure, because it's like, right, he had to go and work with Billy, because even Billy was like, you don't even know where your son is right now. Despite your issues with me, you're talking about, oh, he's your son, you'll take care of it, but you don't even know where he is right now. I do. And the sad thing is, he went to, like, this particular, like, park or whatever, and it's heartbreaking for Joe. It's like, my son comes here to get high. This is the place I taught him to kick a soccer ball for the first time. Like, such a beautiful moment between us, and now knowing that, like, how life has changed to the point my son, you know, comes here to escape to do drugs, and he's like, I put work first. I promise not to be our father, but I still put work first. And he almost thought, like, it's too late for me to, like, you know, he started taking what he believed, you know, being like, right, people don't change. He's like, it's too late for me to change. It's impossible for me to change. But Billy was kind of saying, like, no, it's not. That basically going forward, like, talk to Junior in a way that is like, don't have expectation, don't have these demands or whatever of him, just because, like, at the end of the day, your son, like every one of his other children, Mateo included as well, they all just want to make him proud. They want him to see them for, like, no, like, see us for us. Don't just, like, point out our failures or our mishaps. Like, see us for us, Dad, and see our accomplishments, and let us, you know, be proud of us, because it almost feels like nothing they ever did. It's like, are we ever good enough for you? And I think it's just a mentality that Joe's gotten, because, you know, coming from his circumstances, you got to fight tooth and nail in this country, especially coming from those circumstances, to prove himself to everyone around him, and also, first and foremost, prove himself to, well, himself, you know, that what he's capable of, to show others, like, you don't know what I'm fully capable of. I'm gonna become, as you know, Antonio brings up, it's like, yeah, this is like the third biggest winery, like, company, like, in the country. So, but luckily, circling back to the Junior thing, he didn't get high, because he took what Billy said and kind of found another outlet for it. So luckily everything worked out, and you can tell, like, despite everything, Joe realizes, like, right, his son wouldn't be in a good spot right now if it wasn't for Billy. You know, it's like, maybe his brother isn't the same. Maybe his brother isn't the monster he kind of paints him out to be, or that, you know, that it's like, right, everything he went through did make him a better person. Sadly, there's always going to be the asterisk to know, like, Margaret set that in motion, helping him and stuff like that, just because because it also, like, makes it go, man, you're kind of evil, Margaret. Like, I know, like, you, and I mean, and maybe we'll be a little even more sympathetic the moment the series continues, because then we'll start realizing, like, okay, I can see why you hold such a vendetta against Joe, but, like, wrapping your children, your entire family, the person you once upon a time considered your best friend, but it's like, right, your best friend did kind of take, in your mind, it's probably like your best friend took away your husband and your family, and it's just like a lot of that resentment. She lost her family in more ways than one, was just the vineyard and everything. She wasn't there. She kind of left Carmen behind when Carmen was super young. That's why, like, Veronica has, like, such a beef with her too. So I think they're probably most likely going to do a good job of, like, making you feel more sympathetic towards Margaret, seeing her at a low point where she kind of lost everything, probably stuff with her dad, the thing with Joe and the kids. Like, I'm sure it all amalgamates to, it's still, I don't know. I'm not going to say she's going to be justified, but I think it's going to be like, it's going to make you at least a little more understanding. But I still think it's like, it's pretty jacked up using also one of you. Like, the whole point is you're trying to turn that family against each other. You already did because you got your son to turn against, and, you know, he's slowly like manipulating and just, you know, using his siblings without even realizing it, cozying up to his dad again just to stab him in the back, because it's like, no, it's my way to get back at dad for not only stabbing me in the back, but mom, because mom was there for me when you weren't, dad. When you turned your back on me, mom was there. But it also makes, you have to put an asterisk beside it, because it's like, how long has Margaret been planning this takeover? And so it makes you go like, how much is just you really, your concern and care, and how much is just you, trying to get back what you lost. You know, once again, what does any one of them think the end result is going to be? Like, what does Margaret think? Like, oh, your kids are going to be so happy about this. Antonio, do you think your siblings are going to be happy about it? Does he not care like what the end result is? Because he's spending enough time with them. Hell, they all kind of got together and got drunk and were having a blast and fun. And it's like, all that's going to mean nothing when the time comes, when it's all revealed, when it's all out in the open. Like, that's going to be the rub of it all, you know? It does beg the question, the stuff in the past, is that the last time Billy and Joe saw their dad or not? It's kind of the big question. Because Joe was like, yo, take this money. This is all the money I'm saving up. I would rather you take all this money and leave and never come back than ever spend another minute with you. So we don't know, like, if they're, I mean, it's been a while, so their dad might be gone now, but it's like, did they rekindle? Did they ever fix things before he passed? Once again, there's also the conversation about their mom. I don't think they've talked about her before, but I could be mistaken. I also like the whole thing with Letty, too, like, bouncing between the past and the present, where she's helping out Daniela, spending time with her. It's like, oh, yeah, like, I got, as Mateo's mom, I got to know, like, what's going on in my son's life. And it's like, cool, like, my son, like, falls basically in love, like, you know, quickly kind of wears his heart on his sleeve, and he finds someone that needs to be fixed. She's like, I just want you to be prepared. He's looking for someone that needs to be saved. And so she's like, I want you to be prepared, giving her a dress and stuff like that. It's like, oh, you want me to look the part so I don't embarrass Mateo and stuff like that. She's like, no, like, what do you want? She's like, oh, to send money to my family. She's like, yeah, that's what they want, but I want to know, what do you want? And she wants to open her own in. But she talks about the dress not being her, and she's sorry, but the lady's like, no, you know who you are. And she's like, that's a powerful thing. Not everyone's fortunate enough. And we kind of cut back to the past where Rosa is pointing out, like, oh, that dress is it's from Margaret, right? Yeah, but the thing is, Margaret's got it in her head that her life and our life aren't worlds apart like they are, you know? And I think it is that thing of kind of showing, like, obviously Letty leaving behind Juana to be Letty. And so it's like, kind of like when you're basically had to reinvent yourself, like, all of them changed in many different ways to end up where they are now. And I think even Letty kind of realized, like, yeah, it is kind of like she's kind of lost who she was somewhere along the way, just with everything that's happened, whether it's just everything back then becoming Letty, whether it's just everything with Billy, whether it's everything with Joe, and just where they currently are. Then there's the whole thing of Letty setting up Carmen and Mateo to work together, because Mateo just keeps constantly trying to compare himself to Joe. But rather than trying to continue down the wine route, Carmen was like, why don't we put this up as like a sangria or whatever? And so they do that, and they're having a lot more success. And even Mateo's like, yeah, I was completely wrong about you. She was like, yeah, Dad, I've suggested this to Dad, and he scoffed at me. And Mateo's like, yeah, I did too. She's like, yeah, but at least you had the foresight to decide to, like, shift. Dad stayed adamant about his position and stuff like that. Once again, every one of them, including Carmen, just wants their dad to notice him, like, respect him and see me for who we are, you know? What we're capable of. Like, we all have good ideas, because even Mateo's like, no, like, you got a really good idea. And after Antonio and Veronica had their whole back and forth with the whole wine tasting guessing game, I thought it was kind of interesting. And they kind of opened up, because Valerie even admits, I said Valerie, wait, was it Valerie or was it Veronica? It's Veronica, right? I'm already blanking, because like I'm watching, obviously, Endgame, the main character, her name's Val, which is short for Valerie. I think maybe that's what's kind of like flipping that in my head a little bit. But I think it is Veronica. I'm stumbling because I think in my head I was thinking like right because it's like Veronica from Riverdale. She's dealing with in her head about the fact is that even in retrospect she realizes like maybe I didn't do it intentionally, but maybe on some subconscious level the reason why I didn't help you out was because I wanted to be CEO. But for her it is this thing of no matter what she's done, you know, it is a thing of she thought she had the life she wanted. She thought she met the man that she loved. Because Antonio was almost kind of looking like, what? And it's like, yeah, didn't really dive into that whole Michael thing. It does seem like she's going to talk to Carmen about it. Because out of any of her siblings, it seems like her and Carmen at least have gotten closer. Who knows if they were always tight like that. But I think because she's the one that would be like, well, I'm actually worked that guy Cruz that I ran over. Yeah, I'm actually using him as a means to get dirt on my husband because it turns out the house that the person whose house that it belonged to that Michael spent all that time at, apparently he's someone that Joe like didn't let onto some board or something. He's like, yeah, because I didn't like what he was into. Didn't clash with what we wanted, and it turns out Antonio knows him because this guy is known for having a whole bunch of like sex orgy parties, and it's like, oh, cool. So now you got an idea that that's what Michael's up to, that he's up to some pretty debaucherous stuff maybe. Hey man, you want to have a sex party and stuff like that, float your boat, but I think it's also kind of messed up you do that when you're married. So it's like, unless you and your partner are like, oh, let's do this stuff, you know? I mean, debauchery doesn't always, I mean, maybe inherently debauchery is a bad thing, but I would just always think of Olivier, Oliver rather, the debaucherous prince. Haha! Squeezed in a Trails of Cold Steel reference. Well, a Trails reference, but still, I managed to do it. I did it for me and no one else because I have a problem. Regardless, going on my little tangent, but it is interesting that once again I'm giving him a small enough leeway to be like it's probably going to be a twist that it's not what Veronica thinks it is, that it's not what anyone thinks it is, but we'll see. We'll have to wait and see, but it might be exactly what we think it is. But circling back to it, once again, the conversation of wanting their father's respect, wanting him to be proud of them, that's all Veronica wants. And it's like, yeah, Dad's proud of you. And Antonio's like, yeah, I had to basically go start a company and sell it for millions, you know? Because she thought like, yeah, you went off on your own and Dad respected you. It's like, no, I had to do that too. And she's like, well, that probably contributed it heavily to that. But still. You had Letty also helping Daniela meet with Margaret. It's like cool, like she's going to be working with Margaret, which I'm wondering is that going to be Margaret's way to kind of pull her in. And it's like, cool, I'll help you out. You're looking for your family, you're wanting to help out your family, right? Because she even said like, yeah, just like keep your mouth shut and just listen. Like she was talking in reference to work, but she could also use this as an opportunity, like, cool, I'll be helping out, like, you convincing her, like, oh, this is for Mateo's sake as well. It'll help him out. Like, you help me out, and I'm in turn going to help your family, so it might put Daniel in a very compromised position. Once again, just like everything related to Margaret, you just have to go, oh, come on, I wish you weren't so shady and just maniacal, to some extent, but once again, she has her reasons. Once again, are they fully justified? No, but I think we will become more, at least more sympathetic to her situation. But with the whole family together kind of laughing and joking, obviously everyone recovering from their respective hangovers and stuff like that. I thought it was kind of an interesting development when Billy came over. And I love that the lady who's the maid, she was like, wait, you're a priest now? And she's like, what a waste. I was like, that's so good. And Billy kind of smiling back at her. But, everyone was like, wait, Billy's here. It's like, what do we call you? Like, T.O. Billy? Like, what? It's like, yeah. And even Letty's like, wait, what's going on? What's changed? And he was like, nothing. Everything. And then Letty kisses him because it's like, this is a way to finally have this family fully reunited, which is beautiful. So it seems like him and Letty are in a good spot. But Margaret, seeing the picture from Antonio, is just kind of like, everything's working away. Because she's the one that told Letty, like, hey, Billy might be considering leaving. So I don't think it played out the way she thought it was. She was probably some of that's probably going to go for like, oh, so I heard from Margaret that you were planning on leaving, but he's like, yeah, I kind of changed my mind. Maybe that plays into it, but maybe she was hoping that Letty would reach out to him. But interestingly enough, Joe's the one that reached out. So I don't know if that changes anything. It probably still all goes within the realm of kind of being the end result that Margaret wanted regardless, so. But then there's also a discovery where it turns out there's a body buried beneath, like, the vineyards, and it turns out it's Margaret's dad. So you're like, okay, she said her dad was sick and died. So did she believe that? Like, did they tell her, like, oh, your dad died, and they covered it up? Or at least maybe Joe potentially covered that up? I was about to say, like, not like you're trying to suggest, like, Margaret did that. I was like, I don't know. Because she's the one that said, like, her dad was sick and everything. Like, it made it sound like he was sick and he died. So, could it be that he was sick? Could it have been that someone was secretly poisoning him? Or could it be that he just was sick, but someone killed him before he was just... Because it's like, right, we can't, like, have an autopsy show that someone contributed to his death or something like that. So, maybe that's why he's buried in a vineyard. So, whether that's a Joe and Letty thing, maybe just a Joe thing... Maybe that's connected to Billy. Does Margaret know about this? Does she just, So, that's where I was kind of like, maybe we'll get a little more sympathetic to her because maybe this body ties into that in some shape or form. Quite an interesting development I didn't necessarily see coming. I mean, to be fair, that whole place, Heritage House, has plenty of skeletons. Just wasn't expecting them to be buried in a vineyard, but considering the nature of this, I should have known they just wouldn't be hiding in a closet, that they'd be buried under there. It's only poetic and befitting that it'd be buried beneath, so. It's definitely going to be interesting to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.